Good Monday to you all. We are coming to you live from the beautiful city of New Orleans in Louisiana at the United Public Radio Network at 107.7 FM and the UFO Paranormal Radio Network at 105.3 FM. We are coming to you live from Facebook, Tumblr, Roku, and YouTube. We have a beautiful show. Want to kick it up to our sponsors? Yay, Carnation! We're going to do this fast tonight because we have one heck of a guest and we're going straight to it. We usually talk to our chat people right away when we first come in, but we're time constrained, so we're not going to do that. And last thing I want to say before we go to it is we are praying for everybody in California. Our hearts are with you. Preston's from there. We're watching it with everything on our shoulders and our hearts and our sleeves. We love y'all. Be careful. All right, Preston, go.
Thank you, Dolly. Thank you, everyone, for joining us for episode 90 of The Lightgate. Can you believe it? We're going strong. Of course, I'm your host, Preston Dennett, and my lovely co-host is Dolly Saffron, subject of my book, Symmetry. Super excited about our guest tonight. Yes, I normally love to say hello to all you folks in chat, but you know we love you. So we're going to just bypass that this time because we really want to get to our guest tonight, who is, of course, the amazing James Fox. If you don't know who he is, I don't know where you've been. He's a huge mover and shaker in this field and doing some fantastic work. And I'll just give you a quick rundown of his bio. He began his journalism career early in life as an assistant to his father, the writer Charles Fox, a quadriplegic with multiple sclerosis. Together, they traveled widely to fulfill magazine assignments for publications, including the Rolling Stone, Sports Illustrated, Car and Driver, and interviewing such notables as Stephen Hawking and race car legend Dan Gurney. Of course, James became very interested in UFOs. We'll figure out how that happened. But he finished and sold his first documentary to Discovery by the time he was only 28. Imagine that. He has since completed and distributed TV projects for Sci-Fi Channel, The Learning Channel, National Geographic, and History Channel. And his films include, so far, and I'm sure there's more coming, UFOs, 50 Years of Denial, Out of the Blue, I Know What I Saw, The Phenomenon, one of my favorites. These are all really good. Moment of Contact, The Roswell of Brazil, that's all about the Varginha incident, and his latest film, which is making a huge splash, called The Program. And this one explores the unprecedented bipartisan congressional effort to uncover what intelligence agencies really know about UFOs. And of course, they're now calling them UAPs. I want to ask James what he thinks about that, too. I'm not a huge fan of the term. I think it's kind of a distraction. But let's just bring him on, and we will get this show started.
James, welcome to the Lightgate.
Hey.
Thanks so much for joining us. It's a huge honor.
Should we make UAP UFO again?
I'm not sure UFOs. Let's just call them extraterrestrial craft. I think that's what they are.
Oh my gosh. Everyone's always asking me, like, they think just because I've investigated this for as long as I had that I have all these answers. And I look at people sometimes, I go, I don't really know what's going on. I wish I did.
Well, that's what makes you a good researcher. You know what I mean? Right. You don't know until you know.
Yeah, you know that the vast majority can be explained and have been explained in sort of conventional terms, but there's this stubborn core 15-20% that simply defy a conventional or terrestrial explanation after exhaustive review so that's generally what I tell people. It's like, you could do the process of elimination. If it's not the Russians, it's not the Chinese, it's not the United States, what's left, right?
Pretty sure it's not Chinese, just saying.
yeah.
All right, so as I told you before the show, I usually like to start the show by asking our guests how they got involved in this field. What were they like when they were little kids? Were they skeptical? Have you ever seen a UFO? Basically, what brought you to where you are today?
I don't get asked this question very often. I remember my dad's British. I was born in England. Oh, wow. And my dad had always kept in touch. I mean, we were very close to our side of the family in Britain. In fact, pretty much the vast majority of my family on my father's side still live in England. And we had this one guy who would, very close family friend, British guy. And he would come periodically as I was growing up and have dinners with Christmas, Thanksgiving. And he was a pilot. And he always tell this story about this UFO sighting that he had. It was really quite dramatic. And I respected him. And obviously he was a close family friend. But quite honestly, I never really gave it much thought. It didn't affect me as one might expect it to. It was like, oh, cool. All right, you saw this thing? Yeah, whatever. Anyway, move on to something else. And he told the story a number of times because there were other people that were interested. I was quite young, 12, 13, 14, 15. And then fast forward, I was 18. I was dating a girl who was 19. Her name was Rachel. And she's like, oh, yeah, my previous boyfriend was really, really into UFOs. And I remember thinking, like, why would you date a guy who's into UFOs? Like, it really affected my opinion of her in the sense that I thought, wow, she's got to have a screw loose, or like that she could be that close with somebody who's clearly crazy. But that was my knee-jerk response. I think I probably kept most of it from her. And then a year later, I was 20, and I had a UFO sighting with a friend of mine, and out my bedroom window. I mean, look, if I wasn't with someone, I probably wouldn't be talking about it today. But we saw this object, and the weird thing about it wasn't like broad daylight. And I saw a flying saucer. It was on the ground. There was no question, But what we saw was a glowing sphere that it looked, the best way I can describe it, I know it sounds weird, but almost like it was like pulsating, almost a little bit like a heartbeat or something. Like it was varying degrees of intensity, but kind of, and it was almost like throbbing. And it was right out our bedroom window, man. I mean, Lisa and I looked at this thing, and she goes, "What the F is that?" And I said, "I don't know what that is, but whatever it is, I get the feeling it knows we're looking at it."
Oh, goes, that's a sign.
Same thing. Close the blinds. So I looked out of bed in my face, and I ripped the blinds off the wall onto the floor. And there it was the whole time. It was right there, just doing its thing. Looked like an egg almost. Not that big. I mean, half the size of a Volkswagen Beetle would be my guess. And there it was, like just kind of pulsating right out of our bedroom window. It was almost like the light reflecting on our faces. And I down to the ground, and I grabbed the curtains, and I'm fiercely trying to put the curtains back up again. And we finally get them up, and we're clutching each other in bed. Quite scary, quite honestly. I mean, it wasn't like we felt like threatened or like it was going to harm us, but it was the fact that it knew we were looking at it that we were both uncomfortable with. Anyway, so we I don't know, a couple of minutes later, she goes, "I wonder if it's still there." And I drew the blinds, gone. And I'd say maybe half an hour, 45 minutes later, my sister came home. She was at a concert, my older sister Janine. And she's like, "Hey, what are you guys doing up? It's like midnight or something." And we just saw a UFO, and we told her about it. She remembers that to this day. And then the next morning, you'd think with a household of people, we would have woken up and told everybody. Never told my dad, my dad's partner, my stepmom, nothing, not a word. I didn't say a word probably for the better part of 20 years. In fact, I was 39 years old, walking on a beach in San Diego, California, with a good friend of mine, John, and he had this really rigorous workout regime that he would, I go hiking, whatever, I'll swim, but he goes down the beach and he jogs miles in San Diego, and he would swim out to this buoy, which is like a quarter of a mile out, and we'd swim out to the buoy and then swim back in again, and then come in off the beach and back we'd go to the parking lot, and then we used to go out and get breakfast. That's pretty early in the morning. And we jogged, we swam out to the buoy and then back. And then we're supposed to go left back to the parking lot. And I said, John, I want to go right. And John goes, there's nothing to the right. It's a barren, open beach. We can't get food there. There's nothing. I said, well, I want to go to the right. And we got in a little bit of an argument. And I said, well, John, I want to go to the right. And so we went to the right, and I see a couple sitting on the beach. It was a barren beach. So there was only two adults and a child on a beach. I'm looking at these couple, and it's Lisa Reinhardt, the girl that I'd seen the UFO with. I couldn't believe it. And she didn't live in San Diego. I didn't live in San Diego. I was visiting. She was visiting. We started talking. I said, Lisa, do you remember that thing that we saw? She goes, you damn right I do. I said, well, how do you remember it? Because I didn't want to put anything in her, mind. And so she told me it was exactly as I remembered it. And we talked. I met her husband. I met her daughter. And I could honestly say that had I not been with that person, I probably would have never spoke of it ever again. But that was it. And did she say, she said to me, she's like, do you think that has something to do with what you're doing now? I was like, I don't think so, because I haven't really thought about it. Yeah. It's not like I based my beliefs on that one little thing that I saw, but it's interesting.
What state were you in when you saw it?
I was in Northern California.
Okay.
What a synchronicity that is. That feels like guidance to me.
Wow.
Again,
funny you need to turn right.
Yep. And I got, and I could call her up tomorrow. She could tell you. I could tell my friend John, who was with me, what happened, how it happened. We got into an argument. It was like I could call him right now. It's like, hey, John, what happened? He would tell you exactly. That's exactly how it happened.
It's amazing you came into this as a skeptic. I did the same thing. I remember seeing a guy with long hair talking about UFOs, and I disregarded him because he had long hair and was into UFOs, which is so wrong.
I disregarded this individual just because they believed in UFOs. I don't even know what they look like.
So what brought you to doing what you're? I mean, this is amazing work you're doing today.
So it's funny because it's you get asked this every now and again, and quite honestly, I don't really like to talk about the fact that I'd seen something, and because I can't say that I had a super unambiguous. I mean, it was remarkable in the sense that it was hovering, that it was right out our window. It was right about just above the trees, and the trees weren't particularly that tall. And I mean, honestly, I could say the light from the object was probably glowing a little bit on our faces. Not a lot, but a little bit, like a soft glow. And but again, like the most extraordinary aspect of it was that we both felt that it knew we were looking at it. That's the part that really freaked us out. It's like,
I'm sure you've heard from other witnesses. They say
that all
the
the time. I didn't, but yeah, later I did. Yes. So then I ended up moving to Europe. I spent a couple years abroad. A lot of my family lives in Europe, and I don't know. I really wanted to learn French, and I did an abroad program, and I was there. Probably I turned 21, then I turned 22. And I think I came back to the States at some point when I was 23. I reconnected with an old high school friend, this guy, Renee. And we were very, very close, very, very close, really good friends. And he started talking about UFOs. And then he mentioned like an alien spaceship that crashed at Roswell. And I was like, oh my Lord, this guy is crazy. He's lost his mind since I left. I wasn't even thinking at the time because I was 23. I didn't see Lisa until I was 39. So I've been essentially about that case for 19 years. And I wasn't even thinking about it at the time, but I thought that Renee had lost his mind. I mean, I really did. And I remember thinking, this is so unfortunate. I'm going to have to cut loose one of my dearest friends because I can't be around crazy. And so I went in. I was apprenticing at the time in San Francisco. I didn't live in San Francisco. I lived about an hour north. I was apprenticing at the time doing what's called PSAs, which are public service announcements. I was learning how to edit. I was learning how to operate cameras. I just love that medium of communication. And there was a guy that I really looked up to, who's 10 years my senior. and Richard Van Sickle. And I was like, Richard, you're not going to believe what happened. I was talking to him one day in the studio, and he's like, what's going on? I was like, oh, my really good friend. It's really unfortunate. Like he's lost his mind. He's crazy. I don't know. It's really sad, you know. He goes, well, what do you mean? It's like, well, you know, he started talking about like, you know, UFOs and alien spaceships, and that one crashed in Roswell in 47. And I mean, talk about nuts. And Richard goes, you haven't heard about that? I was like, heard about what? He goes, Roswell? You don't know about Roswell? I was like, no, Richard, I don't know about, how would I know about, no, I don't. He goes, oh, the military said, they actually said they recovered a UFO. I was like, they did? He goes, yeah. He looks up and shows me the headline, and I'm like, really? He goes, yeah, man, they did. And then they covered it up. And then years later, most of the people that were covered it up came forward and testified that it was not of this earth. Really? I was shocked. So then I started looking at my friend Renee in a slightly different light. And I was like, well, you know, maybe I'll go to a couple of these conferences, a lot of conferences, UFO conferences, and just poke around a little bit. And I did. And I went and met a few older researchers. Some of them were former military. And I was like, wait a minute. Maybe there's something to this. And that's how I ended up. In fact, I ended up offering my production, my camera operating skills and my editing skills, and doing some, you know, production for some of these military guys that were doing, you know, trying to spread the word. And I think maybe, I don't know, 18 months into it, maybe I was like 24 and a half or something. Maybe I was 25. And I was like, you know what? I'm doing a documentary on UFOs. So I started talking about it. And my dad, who's like a mainstream journalist, my dad and I got along so well, and he was super supportive of everything I've always done. God, we had such a great relationship. I was because he was a quadriplegic, I was his nurse, I was his chauffeur, I was his secretary. I did all those things, like traveling around the world with him. I mean, I was his legs. And we were tight. We had I don't use the word unique, you know, often, but we had a unique father-son relationship because of that. And he had a great sense of humor and always supportive. And I told him about what I was going to do, and he was absolutely appalled. Like, he was so unsupportive and so, like, you know, he went as far as having all the other members of our family in Europe write me letters begging me to reconsider what I was doing. And they were saying,
oh my gosh,
I'm not kidding you, I swear to you. And they were saying, you need to reconsider. Your father's very concerned. My dad was saying it's a dead end road. There's nothing to it. You're going to waste your life. Like, what are you doing? Like, he said to me, it's a dead end street. There's nothing to this. Like, please don't do this. Don't go down this road.
I had a similar reaction from my own father, actually.
Yeah. And I remember thinking, like, gosh, don't you want me to be happy? Because when I grew up, he used to say, like, I don't care if you want to be a garbage man or if you want to do this. As long as you're happy, I'm happy. He literally would say that to me. Never felt pressure to be a doctor or a lawyer or any of those things, right? But this was so out of the blue. Like, I was just kind of shocked. And I was like, you know what? I'll show you, you know, I'll show you. And I worked harder than I'd ever worked. Wow. And I spent 4 years making that documentary. My God, was it difficult. I had no idea what went into making a documentary.
Wow.
And I had no money. And I ended up getting connected with another guy who who worked at a production facility. This guy, Boris Zuboff. We're still working together today. That's the 7th year anniversary edition. That's the second version of Out of the Blue, because I did 50 years of denial. Then I did Out of the Blue, which took me the better part of 5 years. Then I did an anniversary edition, which took me another 2.5 years. Yeah. And then I did I Know What I Saw. And then I did The Phenomenon. And then I did Moment of Contact, which everyone said I was crazy. And then I did the program. And so anyway, I'm sorry if I'm going on too long here. You can just shut me up.
No, this is fascinating.
Yeah. And so I was like, I'm going to work harder than I've ever worked. And I did. I mean, I tell you, I think it took me 4 years, and it was brutal. Like, I just, people are like, you need B-roll. I was like, what's B-roll? What are you talking about B-roll? Like, you got to write
B-roll is.
Yeah, all this stuff. And I remember I finished it and I sold it to Discovery Channel. It was like, what? Everyone was like, you sold it to Discovery? I was like, yeah, I did. They couldn't believe it. And nobody could believe it. Like, it was like a miracle. It was like I won the lottery.
Wow.
And
was it easy to do? I mean, did you have a hard time selling it to?
No, I did not. It was sold before I even finished
it. Was meant to be. It was meant to be.
Before I finished it.
Wow.
As was Out of the Blue, as was I Know What I Saw, as was The Phenomenon, as was Moment of Contact.
Amazing.
You're in the right place at the right time.
The program was the only film that I didn't. The program is the only film I didn't sell, and I didn't because I had a catastrophic failure with my previous distributor, and I would say all, but the vast majority of money that we made on Moment of Contact was stolen from me, and so I just lost all my faith in distribution companies. I won't bore your audience with the details because it doesn't matter, but it was terrible. And so now we did, for the first time in my 30-year career, the most independent release in the history of any production I've ever made.
Well, I hope it continues to grow and grow and grow and grow for you. That's important,
Thank you. I try to put out good content. I always felt like a lot of the content UFO related was kind of hokey and low production value. I don't know about speaking like sweeping, but for the most part, I thought it's not getting the production value it deserves. This story deserves better. Like, it deserves higher production values. And I would look at stories on just about every other topic, and it was like beautiful production. And then when it came to UFOs, it was just like so hokey, and so low budge. And I always strive to make things like better.
Well, did your father see everything that get to see everything you did? Oh.
Well, okay. So I always I lived paycheck to paycheck, pretty much broke. I used to use the expression, and it was quite serious. I was so broke I couldn't afford to pay attention. And I would have to say that was probably until my dad died when I was 43. He did see, like, I'll give you an example. Like, I Know What I Saw. That was pretty incredible, like how that whole thing went down. And I don't need to bore your audience with that because it doesn't matter. But I sold it for $500,000 to NBC Universal, which sounds like a lot of money, right? Well, I was 4 years in. Yeah, I was 4 years in when I made that film, and for almost $400,000 in debt. And I had a partnership that I split things 50-50. So after taxes, I made about 30 grand.
Wow.
It took me 4 years.
People are like, $30, you should be rich. I'm like, no.
I'm super fortunate that I even sold it, right? And then it got distribution, and then we made something, right? So, but my dad used to say, well, funny enough, so I did 50 Years of Denial, sold that. He was like, okay, interesting. Then I did Out of the Blue. And during the production of Out of the Blue, I went to Russia.
Ooh.
I met the cosmonaut Pavel Popovich and General Alexeyev, and it was Star City, Russia. And wow, it was pretty impressive. When I came home from Russia, prior to that, I had put in, I don't know, maybe 30 requests for an interview with Mercury astronaut Gordon Cooper. And it was like, no. And then Out of the Blue, he responds, I'll meet with you. So then I went to meet with Mercury astronaut Gordon Cooper in the 90s. And I was like, well, hey, my dad always takes me to all these interviews. I'm taking him. Yeah. So I took my dad to the interview, which is a lot of work. You try traveling with a quadriplegic. Okay.
Yeah, it's not
A
easy.
lot of work.
Wow.
And then on top of the fact that I'm operating the camera, I'm doing the audio because I couldn't afford to pay anybody else to do any of that stuff. I did my own editing. And Gordon Cooper was an iconic figure to my dad's generation. I mean, this is the last American astronaut to go up in space alone.
I hate to tell you this. I knew him. He and my
Yeah.
father worked together. Yep.
Yeah. So, so,
I do.
and then he listened to the story about over Germany and this landing at Edwards Air Force Base circa 1957 and the film footage that he had in his hands and yada, yada, yada. Wow. My dad was like, why would he say this stuff? You're not paying for anything. He has everything to lose and nothing to get. Why would he say these things?
Right.
And that kind of hooked my dad. He was like, he became one of my big supporters. Then I did the National Press Club event with Leslie Kean in 2007. I made a movie about that. He saw that. And then I sold that. I was telling NBC Universal. He was very proud of me. Then I did this stupid TV show, which whatever. And then
I've done some TV, I know.
Only person to blame but myself,
Okay, it's all right. Been there, done that.
But I made up for it with the phenomenon.
Yes, you did. I
Very
love the
cool.
phenomenon. That was so well done. You got me going. You really did.
I would have to say the phenomenon, the birthing process of that film was I was either going to die or I was going to get the movie done. There was nothing in between. And what was going to come first is the only question. I was either going to die or the movie's going to get completed. I mean, it's one or the other. A lot of people might think I'm sounding melodramatic. I'm not. I was in a fetal position crying for 4 days when I finished that movie. It was absolutely, I never want to relive that moment ever again. It was brutal.
Wow. What was it so brutal? I mean, why that particular one?
First of all, it was an 8-year project. I ran out of money so many times. I had no bank account for a couple of years. I became a dad.
It sure is well done. It works.
Yeah,
so I guess
old partners trying to get it, just trying to get it. It's a long story, man. We don't have all night. Let me just say this.
Adversity comes the best things sometimes. Though.
This, if you can see that, if you can see how close that is, see how close it is? That's how close the phenomenon came to being shelved after it was done.
Oh, wow.
Because it was a liability, and the people that helped me get it. Yeah, it was. It was pretty crazy. Yeah.
All right, so let's jump into the program. This is the one we really want people to see.
Let's get with the program.
So, how did this one come about, and tell us about it?
So, one of the things that people were questioning my intentions on is when I finished the phenomenon, there was a case that I'd been investigating on and off with a dear friend, Marco Leal, who's at it much longer than me, in Brazil, of an alleged crash and a crash retrieval case with live aliens, right? And I know it sounds crazy if anyone's unfamiliar with the 1996 Varginha UFO incident. I completely understand. If you don't know about it, you'd look at me like up the dosage of the medication I'm not on. And but I was going to I had gone back and forth to Brazil probably 5 times over a 12-year span. And I was going to include a 10 or 12-minute segment, just like I did with Rua, Zimbabwe, just like I did with the 1966 Westall Primary School landing case in Australia, like, Socorro, New Mexico, featuring these like little stories and stringing them all together. Everyone's
Father Gill case. I love the cover. That
Father Gill case. Yep, exactly. 1958. And I got to the end of it. I'd done all the translation. I'd put together a nice little 10 to 12-minute segment. And I ended up deleting it out of the entire movie. Just gone. And the people in Brazil were like, oh my gosh, they were dead. Oh, what? We spent some years, 12 years. Yeah. I said, I can't squeeze it in. It doesn't work. I have to do what's right for the movie, not what's right in my head. Like, it doesn't work. So when I finished the phenomenon, I had suddenly found myself, for the first time ever, that I had access to intelligence folks, and not only access, but respect. Intel folks, Podesta, former Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid, publicly endorsing the film, people on both sides of the aisle. Everyone was just, and then I was like, I need to go back and I need to address this case in Virginia. And I was telling some of the people that I've been working with, they were like, James, I'm not trying to be disrespectful, but I would like to remind you that you've worked so hard to build on the credibility. You pushed the envelope really hard with the phenomenon. You've got all these public figures in your film, and you got this respect, and they're endorsing you. And you, for the first time in your career, you featured alleged close encounters of the third kind, people, claiming to see entities, and yada, 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 yada. Are you sure you really want to jeopardize all that by putting out a documentary on live aliens walking around the city? Really? Just think about it. Just want you to think about it. And they were, to some respect, to some extent, I mean, that was a valid concern. But I was like, well, I think it happened. And so I'm going to do it. So when I finished Moment of Contact, I was surprised at how little mainstream coverage I got, because I got a lot with the phenomenon. I mean, I was on MSNBC and CNN and The Guardian and Fox News. And I mean, it was just everywhere. Not with Moment of Contact, I wasn't.
We don't like talking about live aliens.
Because people were weirded out by it, man. I'm telling you, they weren't ready for that. But, despite all of that, it got picked up, and it actually got to the top of the charts. It took a while. Just like I think the program has not been discovered yet. It's doing well. It was number 1 for 3 weeks on Apple.
Not bad.
Yeah, it's not bad, but I want to get higher in the all genre charts, but we will. And it ended up doing quite well. Now, one thing I could never have predicted is that 4, 5, 6 months after the release of Moment of Contact, that a high-level intelligence officer was going to be testifying under oath in front of a bipartisan group of lawmakers that there's a crash retrieval program and biologics recovered. I never saw that coming. Okay.
You're talking about Grush here?
Sorry. Yeah.
Are you talking about Grush?
Yeah, David Rush. Yeah. I never saw that. Are you kidding me? Like, you think I would have seen that one coming? I absolutely didn't see that coming. I couldn't believe it. There I was, because I was defending my position. People, honestly, I had my neighbor over here who runs Make-A-Wish.
Oh, wow.
He goes, James, I really had a lot of respect for you. I love your work. The phenomenon opened my eyes, but you lost me on this one. I'm sorry. I just can't. Yeah, it's a bridge too far. I said, hey, yeah, I understand. Watch the movie. Listen to the eyewitness testimony. So when I started making the program, it was personal to me. And I say that because I was convinced, and I don't, your audience can say I'm crazy. That's fine. I personally was convinced that the United States Air Force was involved in that crash recovery of Virginia, Brazil, 1996. And I met with a number of military personnel from Brazil over a 12-year period that told me the Americans were involved. So now, naturally, I'm going to start investigating. Okay, the trail goes cold once the United States Air Force flight comes in January 20th into Campinas, and then they send a couple of helicopters to Virginia, take some debris, load it on the plane, back to the United States. Cold case, right? So now my intention at the time was to follow up. What happened? Let's get some information on the Americans' involvement. And but that was my intention. And then all of a sudden we have open congressional hearings 6 months later on crash retrieval. So Grush opened the door for something that I was already going to do. So it made my work that much easier, because I suddenly found myself asking the same questions that I would have asked prior to David Grush. But now that David Grush testified under oath to, a joint group of a bipartisan group of lawmakers, hey, it's okay to ask about that, because I can just say, like, do you believe the assertion made under oath by, intelligence officer David Grush that the U.S. military is in possession of crash retrieval, alien spaceships, blah, blah, blah. And so, and on top of all that, when I was focusing on getting moment of contact, a lot had gone down. I mean, from 2017 to 2022, 2023, my gosh, like all the legislation that had been written.
It's amazing.
The first congressional hearings in 2022 by Congressman Carson. I mean, suddenly we're living in a different world. I mean, there's no longer talking about whether or not UFOs are real or not. It's like, it's gone beyond that, right? And so there was a natural progression. I mean, quite honestly, it's kind of a natural progression. I look at the program as kind of a sequel to the phenomenon, but I also see it as moment of contact seems to be a perfect in between for that, or even after that. In fact, I'm going back to Brazil in a couple of days to do some follow-up investigations on that case.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, it's absolutely timely. This is unprecedented in a lot of ways. I'm wondering what you think is the reason why suddenly, this is entering official government. Why is our government finally talking, you think?
Well, they're not talking because they really want to talk. I mean, I remind people because a lot of people are highly dubious of the government. I don't blame them. We've been lied to about this for decades. But there have been individuals over the decades that have wanted the truth to come out. I mean, you look at, Dr. Hynek, you look at former CIA director Roscoe Hillenkotter, you look at Jesse Marcel,
Donald Kehoe.
Yeah, Kehoe.
James McDonald.
Absolutely, Dr. James McDonald. And it's like people have come forward. People have tried to, witnesses, scientists, physicists. I mean, what was the book written by the former head of Project Blue Book regarding the 2 consecutive weekends in July of 1952? UFOs buzzing the Capitol. There was a whole book written on that from the guy at the time who was head of Ruppelt, right?
Ed Ruppelt. Yep. Ed
Ruppelt. So, it's not the first time. There just seems to be a lot more momentum now. And I don't think they're putting that genie back in the bottle.
Yeah.
I want you to do yourself a favor when you're in Brazil. Ask yourself why there's momentum right now. That is the key question. You all need to focus on that one. You really do. Why?
Well, it's funny actually, because I've talked to people, and this is like me kind of the slow evolution process internally. I mean, even though I report on some pretty crazy stuff, I'm still I'm somewhat skeptical, and I don't just believe cases right off the bat. I didn't believe Virginia. I didn't believe Rue. I didn't believe Socorro. I didn't believe the landing in Australia in 1966. I have a tough time getting around all that. But one of the things that I've sort of organically the conclusion that I've come to is that just the past few years, quite honestly, and that is that the phenomenon is in on the secrecy too. And the reason why I say that is because you look at what they do and then you look at what they don't do. They've had some pretty brazen, revelations or sightings or actions that they've taken. O'Hare Airport, Phoenix Lights, 1997, Hudson Valley, Bentwaters. I mean, there's
Gulf
been
Breeze, Whitfield, Virginia. It goes
Michigan,
on.
Ann Arbor, absolutely. 1986 over Brazil. They've done some pretty brazen things, right? But taking it right up, they only have to hover over the Macy's Day Parade or the next Super Bowl, and it's game over, right? But they don't do that. They don't do that.
They did once in Italy, that soccer game. You may have heard that.
True. 1958, yeah. I remember that. Great case.
No cell phones, unfortunately. That
true that. Yep. Yep. No question. But my point is, they must also be in on the secrecy. They have to be.
Oh, of course. I mean, absolutely. They know. There's no doubt in their minds what's going on with our governments and stuff. They know everything. Trust me, they know.
Yeah, and okay, this is really crazy. This is one of the first times I started really thinking about it. Travis Walton, Fire in the Sky. Snowflake, Arizona, was it 1975?
Yes.
I think that's right. Okay. Yep. 73? No, I think you're right.
No, 75.
75. Okay. So I've been to that area where they, swooped him up, or where he ran into the force field and got,
burned.
Hurt. Yes. Yeah, exactly. That's a remote area. Okay. Had they dropped him off there 5 days later in the condition that he was in, I guarantee you he would have died. No question about it. I don't even think I could make it back, especially, I don't know what month it was, but if it was winter particularly. They dropped him off after 5 days, and they did it in this little valley on the outskirts of town, right near a payphone. And they did it in an area that would increase the likelihood of him getting help and decrease the likelihood of them being seen.
Correct.
Right? Yeah. And so that really spoke volumes to me. I remember it was one of the first times I was like, wait a minute. They were concerned about his well-being. They wanted to make sure he was going to be okay.
And he was healed of his wounds.
He was healed of his wounds. And they didn't want to expose themselves overtly. All they had to do was hover over the town in broad daylight during the frenzy of investigations and all the inquiries that were taking place. And everybody testifying, or giving the polygraphs. That would have just ended it right there. They did not do that. So that's interesting. So you look at what they do and you look at what they don't do.
Speaks volumes. Yep.
Well, you also have to know that where he was taken up, people have dogs that can track you anywhere you are within a 20-mile radius. And they had plenty of them to do it. And they did. They took the dogs out and went looking for him. That's absolute fact. I know that one for a fact. They went looking for him. They would have found him if he was findable. Okay. Yep. And they did not. That's number one. Fact number one. Fact number two is then he shows up, 4 days later and he's healed. He's not dehydrated. He's not dying near a payphone, like you said. Okay. Yeah. This is irrefutable truths that they cannot deny. None of them.
It's really cool, you guys. I got the opportunity to meet a couple of the other witnesses that were with him that night. Yeah. And one in particular, I'm sorry I can't remember his name, but I found out he was working at a Walmart or one of these big superstores at night. In the early evening, and I got in touch with him, and he responded like, "Hey, if you want to come up, I'll take a little quick break, and I can meet with you." But I'm not doing anything. It wasn't about. It was just a personal thing. I didn't put him on camera or anything like that. Right. So I just wanted to talk to the other witnesses, and he goes, "I'll never forget this." And there was a handful of eyewitness testimony that's made an indelible impression on me, and this one in particular. He goes, I was like, well, what was it like when you saw this? What was it like? And he got out of the car. Remember? He goes, have you ever seen a brand new Corvette on the showroom floor? Beautiful. So perfect and beautiful, like a brand new Corvette, like that. And it's like his eyes lit up. He was like, it was more perfect than that.
Wow.
I always remember that. I was like, oh my gosh, that is so cool. What? Who would have thought, about this object being just so, it was like the epitome of perfect, like better than a brand new Corvette, you know.
Amazing.
Nobody
Right?
here knew that. No, yeah.
These little gems that you get over the years from eyewitness testimony. It's like, you know, how many people do you get to talk to? There's only a handful of people in my career over 30 years and I've interviewed a lot of people where, you know, you get someone who's that close to it, right?
Right.
You know, I get people in Australia who talked about the Westall, the primary Westall, you know, where it was sitting on the ground and they're like 5-10 feet away from it, sitting on the ground in broad daylight, you know. Burroughs and Pennison talking about the Bentwaters landing case in December 1980, where, you know, they're touching it and inscribing the little symbols. I mean, wow, you know what I mean? Like,
you're gonna have to talk to Dolly. She's been inside him.
Yeah.
But anyway,
and that says nothing of the experiencers, of course. And I think that this is kind of where we're headed, because not because I don't believe them, but I've avoided close encounters of the third kind probably for the first 25 years of my career.
Good. That's good. I'm glad you did that, because vetting people is complicated. Okay. Preston took 6 years to vet me. 6. And he went through every aspect of my life. He left nothing unturned or nothing unlooked at, from friends, family, acquaintances, photos, physical, medical, all of it. Okay. He knows the entire contents of my entire life. And I was happy it took him 6 years, because I didn't want to come out and have no proof. I didn't want to come out and not be able to say, this is verifiable stuff, people. You need to start thinking.
An overzealous advocate can do as much damage as someone who's, you know, a debunking skeptic.
Right. Yeah. And now he has all of these people that he also researches, and I watch him do it, and his vetting practices are serious stuff. You know, because you can't, not everybody is 100% vettable or believable even sometimes.
We have to ask, you know,
there's a lot going on out there.
Lives. Ask them hard questions.
You know, I remember Leslie Kean was close with Bud Hopkins. And when we did the National Press Club event in 2007, which was super proud of that event we did. And I got to hang out with Bud Hopkins one day. I can't remember if it was before we did it or right after we did it. But in any case, he was super excited. And he had like a whole stack of papers. And he's like, I got to show you something. You got to see this. And obviously, you know, I'd heard about, you know, so-called abductions and contact and all that stuff. But I'd always was a little cautious, a little bit, you know, I not that I didn't believe, but I didn't say I did believe, but I was open, and I've learned to be more open as I've gotten more down the wormhole, whatever. And he had these illustrations that he had all of these experiencers that didn't know each other from all around the world.
Right.
And he said to them something like, tell me what you see on the craft. What's around you? What's on the walls? And there was this symbol on the wall of the spaceship or whatever it was. And I'm telling you, I must have looked at 18 or 20 drawings from people that didn't know each other, all draw the same damn symbol. I mean, variations of it, right? But I'm telling you, man, it was the same symbol. And that rocked me to the core, because I thought, how on earth could this possibly happen without some legitimacy to, do you know what I mean?
Yes.
Like,
exactly. Yep.
It was phenomenal. Phenomenal.
So who was your favorite interview in the program?
Yeah.
Probably Hal Puthoff, but you know, Hal, it was probably the first time where I'm interviewing a subject that will, according to him, go to jail if he reveals too much.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
And he says a lot with his eyes. And it was a remarkable time I had with Hal Puthoff. You know, even though he doesn't say, well, he talks about the complexities or the politics of disclosure. I'd never really given it that much thought, like how it's a complex issue, far more complex than I'd ever really imagined. You know, you think of like, you know, oh, wouldn't it be great to discover that we're not alone in the universe and we have definitive proof that there's life besides life here on Earth, and it would be a big kumbaya moment and we'd get together for a group hug and, you know, and it would be unifying, and it would, you know, transcend politics and borders and religion and all these things. And wow, you know, but then, you know, he really had given it more than just some thought. I think he was part of a panel of people that were contemplating how disclosure would be done in somewhat of an official capacity. And that was a very remarkable moment for me. I remember I met with, which I wish I could meet again with him, Robert Bigelow.
Oh, wow.
And it was right after I did I Know What I Saw. And like, I think his secretary reached out. I still have the email. Secretary reached out like 2009, maybe 2010, 2009, 2010, maybe 2009. And, you know, Mr. Bigelow would like, and I didn't know, to be honest with you, at the time, I wasn't even sure who Bigelow was. Mr. Bigelow would like to congratulate you on a job well done. I was like, huh, it seemed weird. Like, why wouldn't he just reach out? Why did he have a secretary? So I Googled him. I was like, oh my gosh, Robert Bigelow? Bigelow Aerospace? Like, what? And so long story short, we got together. We had lunch at his home in Las Vegas. And he goes, you understand, you know, we did extensive research into the impact so-called disclosure would have on the world. And he said to me, you know, you take every scandal, Monica Lewinsky, Iran-Contra, like all the scandals ever, and then you multiply that by 1,000, or maybe he said 1,000,000, I don't know. And that is the impact that this story would have. Financial institutions, religious institutions. And I remember thinking, oh, please, this guy, what? You know, really? Come on. And then he said to me, oh, and by the way, they're walking among us. And I looked at him almost sideways. And I went, I'm sorry, I'm not quite clear with what? He goes, they're walking among us. I said, what do you mean by that? They're walking among us. And he goes, I mean exactly that. They are walking among us. And I just like, I don't know. I just put it back here, forgot about it. And only, you know, and then, you know, that I've covered since then, I've covered a number of Close Encounters of the Third Kind. And then in the program, I report on what many would consider a very controversial encounter that reportedly happened at Nellis Test Range in 1994, in the winter of 1994, with, so I guess you'd call it an alien or an entity, a being that was non-human. And it's a bit of a stretch, particularly because I'm always trying to target my films to a more mainstream audience, because I figure, like, what's the point of preaching to the proverbial choir? Like, I want to sort of, not that I don't want to,
well, it's going mainstream because of your work. You know what I mean?
You know what I mean? Like, so I feel like I push it a little further each time. And to those critics out there, fair enough. I can take the criticism. For those of you that say that's impossible, that didn't happen, or I don't believe Jason Sands, I say in my response, well, don't take it from me. Go look at the work from Dr. Jalen Hynek, who is the scientific advisor to Project Blue Book for 22 plus years for the United States Air Force, who categorized sightings in an official capacity as close encounters of the first, second, and third kind. And the third kind, of course, being that the witnesses report beings, critters, aliens connected to the craft. And that is within the Air Force's own files, dating back to at least the 1940s, right?
They know.
So, yeah, I know you guys are well informed. But my point is, like, that's my response. So do I believe in close encounters of the third kind? You're damn right I do.
Well, all right. We need to take a quick station ID, and then I'd love to pop up a few questions from chat, if that's all right.
Sounds great.
But yeah, just want to let you all know you're watching the Lightgate, episode 90. I'm your host, Preston Dennett. My lovely co-host is Dolly Safran. Our guest tonight is James Fox, author of many documentaries. Most recently, The Program. That's mostly what we're talking about tonight, but we're talking about everything. We are streaming on several platforms. We are on YouTube. We are on Facebook. We are on Roku. Check us out there. We're also streaming live on the United Public Radio Network and the UFO Paranormal Radio Network, 107.7 FM, 105.3 FM. Shout out to Carnation. Thank you for your support for our show and the other shows you support. Thank you guys for staying with us through the first hour. We're going to have James for another half hour, I think, unless he has to pop off. But so our time is limited, but I'm going to try to get to some of these questions. Before I do, I have one for you, James. What to you is disclosure, and do you think we'll get there? When?
That's a good question, because I remember asking this. It was probably 2008, and I was finishing up the documentary, the 2-hour special. I Know What I Saw, which I ultimately sold to A&E, which is History Channel. And I was walking. I always try to get B-roll with the people that I interview, so we have something to cut away to, or maybe I'm establishing who they are. So I'm doing a walk and talk with Nick Pope. It was right around the time when the British were releasing, the MOD was releasing previously classified documents about UFOs. There was this unprecedented push at the time for transparency. The French were doing it. I remember going to CNES, the Centre National d'Études Spatiales, which is like the French equivalent of NASA. They were talking about UFOs. Like, it was pretty amazing period. And I was like, wow, is it happening? Like, is it happening now? And I was talking with Nick Pope, walking along by the Parliament, beautiful shot. And I said, do you anticipate any kind of disclosure? Like, are we coming up on disclosure kind of thing? Nick's so articulate and so amazing. He goes, you know, James, think of it this way. Think of it as disclosure with a small d, not a big D.
Correct.
But think about that. Fast forward to now. Probably, sorry, I'm trying to remember the date of the last congressional hearing that happened in November in Washington, D.C., which I attended, which was amazing. And after the hearing, and people are like, oh, it was a nothing burger. I'm like, we had Rear Admiral Tim Gallaudet basically testify under oath that we have UFOs performing characteristics underwater that defy a conventional explanation. Unbelievable. And then another intelligence person say under oath, that there's a crash retrieval program. That's not a nothing burger, okay? That's something. There are consequences for lying to Congress under oath. So afterwards, I would say a couple of hours later, there was an event. I'm trying to remember the name of the organization that put it on, Disclosure Project, something like this. And Senator Mike Rounds came up and gave I filmed the whole thing. And he said, look, I know it's a little frustrating. People feel like things aren't happening fast enough. I remind you, we've had 3 congressional hearings in the last 3 years. That's something. And it could be a little frustrating, and we're not getting answers fast enough. He said, I want to remind you guys that we're not running a 100-yard dash. We're running a marathon right now. Sit tight. Just sit tight, be patient, stick with us. This is happening. And I thought that was very eloquently put, because do I believe that disclosure is coming? I never thought I'd hear myself say this, but yes, it's happening right now. We are experiencing disclosure right now. I mean, look at the program. Look at the NDAA, like from 2023 and 2024, the National Defense Authorization Act. Look at some of the legislation. Look at the language within the National Defense Authorization Act. They talk about crash retrieval. They talk about legacy program. It's right there in black and white.
Yep.
Like the fact that the mainstream media hasn't picked up on that is mind-boggling to me.
We're not letting them. I have a question for you. Do you know
Yes.
what a false flag is?
Oh, I've heard about false flag. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Have you considered that the way this is happening, it's the narrative is being directed by them completely, and that this
by them, by who?
by Congress, all of those guys. Okay, the industrial complex, which is real. It exists.
Well, the DOD, yes, Congress.
Eisenhower spoke about it specifically.
Oh, yeah.
Okay,
I think Eisenhower was talking about the non-elected officials. I think Eisenhower was talking about
yes,
the government within the government.
Right. Well, you have to be a moron not to think that they're not working hand in hand, and they are. I have listened very carefully, and just so you know, in Congress, unless it's in the congressional record, instituted into the record, it's non-start. They only put one thing into the record this last time. Absolutely put it in, and it was that paper, and it was a national security incident paper that they were worried about. And even Grush, all of them are using that terminology now. It is now becoming a national security incident. You can go back and look at every single time before Congress, nothing has been read into the record except that one document. They're getting ready to pull a false flag. ET is very well aware of this, by the way. They're watching
about this. Yep.
Yes. If you talk to experiencers who really know what's going on, and there are a few of us, we will tell you straight to your face, this is going to get ugly because it will become a national security incident. They are not going to take ET lying down. They're not.
I think that it always kind of has been a national security. And I remember interviewing this general one time, and he was almost laughing at me because I talked about that kumbaya moment of we're not alone. Isn't that amazing? And he kind of chuckled at me, and he goes, "Kid, let me tell you something. You are looking at it entirely through the wrong lens." I was like, "Well, what lens am I supposed to look at it through?" And he goes, "Okay, so imagine for a moment we have structured craft of unknown origin that exhibit a technology that's light years advanced from anything that we have. They fly rings around our fastest jets. Shall they turn to be hostile? We have no visible means of defense against them. We don't know who they are, where they come from, what they want. Do you honestly think that's the kind of information we're going to disclose to the general public? If you have objects that you can't identify whizzing around with impunity in our airspace, that's a national security issue. Because if you don't know what it is, you have to assume. Now, I'm not saying this is my position on it, but the position from the military standpoint, who's there to protect us, you don't know where something is. It's whizzing around with impunity, particularly on super sensitive military installations. You have to conclude at the end of the day that maybe that it's a threat. And I think that if they were here to destroy us, it would have been game over decades ago.
You're right. And I think it's the vision that they want you to think that you are protected by them, and they're really clueless.
They're not in control. We all know that.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
And,
they're not.
All right. Let's pop up some questions because there's a lot and we're never going to get to them all, but we'll give a good, honest try. Whoops, at a few of them.
Just so you know, I like sunsets and long walks on the beach.
Okay. That's cool. Yep.
Okay, here's one question from Flea Market Gold. How do you think experiencers fit into disclosure? Do you anticipate that the stigma will continue to diminish?
You know, I was talking to Leslie Kane about that recently, and she just has a new series that came out. I think it's with National Geographic. And she said that they have at least one, if not two episodes on experiencers. Now, if you're going to take an experiencer at face value, experiencers would have, direct communication with the phenomenon, right? So that would be, one, to take it at face value, one would have to assume, if the accounts are to be believed, that they would have better information than anybody else, right? Now, Could we say that the phenomenon itself has been distorting reality, has been fooling, tricking us? I have to consider that as a possibility. Do I feel like the government's been tricking us? You damn right I do. Is the phenomenon tricking us? That's on the table too, because I don't know. Because if they wanted to reveal themselves overtly, as we talked earlier on the show, they could do it, but they don't do it.
They have been doing it, and there are a lot of researchers,
but they haven't like made it definitive.
Yeah, they're driving it toward people, not governments.
Yeah, not in a way that would cause a complete upset of society. I think that might be a concern.
Yeah, hey, you know, I get it. And look, I know less today than I did 30 years ago. I really do.
I know the feeling. No, you know more, but I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
There's just levels and levels and levels to this.
Yeah.
Okay, here's another question which is relevant to what's going on these days. This is from Michael Kennedy. Mr. Fox, could you please give us your opinion on the ongoing UFO swarm, drone swarm, I guess he's talking about, and what you have gained from your extremely knowledgeable contacts such as Robert Bigelow, which you already did discuss a little bit. Yeah, the drones in New Jersey, UAPs.
I looked into those extensively. I got a buddy of mine. He goes, I live here. I'm at the epicenter, you know, and he was doing boots on ground interviews with residents. And as with any UAP wave, right? You know, you start getting a whole group of people looking up to the sky every night. They're seeing things that perhaps have always been there, or, you know, activity that they may misconstrue. But underlying all that is definitely something that seems to be inexplicable. Case in point, there's one case of 50 UFOs, 50 UAP coming in off the ocean. They have prolonged loitering time. You know, these are highly advanced, super sophisticated, you know, things that, you know, you wonder sometimes, okay, so could they, and I'm not saying they are, but could some of these be coming across as a technology that we can just about wrap our minds around, so they can look like something that's somewhat familiar to us? I'm talking about the phenomenon.
They wouldn't do that. They wouldn't backtrack just to get in between. Well, you won't see
the dirigibles back in the 1880s or whatever. You remember? Yeah. They looked almost like the things, the big dirigibles. They called them dirigibles.
Yeah, people were saying
I think those may have been dirigibles, honestly.
Yeah. Oh, really?
Yeah, I really do. They were invented at the same time.
Yeah. There's some information out there that you don't know that I'm going to impart to you right now. Okay. Our magnetosphere is down 40%. We're going through a pole change. Our entire solar system, every planet in our solar system except Mars, because Mars has no magnetism anymore, is changing their poles. Our sun is doing it also. We're experiencing cataclysmic weather as a result of it, volcanoes, the whole thing. And they're not done yet. And we're heading toward the pinnacle of that. Our magnetosphere is so screwed up now, and the magnetic field lines are so jollied up that ET is absolutely not here. They bugged out 2 years ago, and they're not here right now. So nothing you see in the air is ET, period.
Oh, you think it's all conventional at this point?
Yes, it's absolutely all conventional. That's the perplexing.
Robert Goodall said that. That's what Cheryl Costa said. You know, other people who.
Yeah. I'm of the position where I feel like I can never make any definitive statements on anything. You know, I could say I can lean in this direction or I'm leaning in that direction, but I really don't know. I mean, unlike you, Dolly, I've never had face-to-face contact with entities. I've never had that.
Yeah, but I can give you information that you can prove to yourself that our poles are causing a problem. And they fly here. Talk to Bob Lazar. They fly our magnetic field lines, period. And they're wonky. They can't fly. They crash. And 2 years ago, they decided, that's it. We're done. We're out of here. And they left. They took people off the ground and they left. There are very few of us left. And I am one of them that stayed behind, just so you know. And it is not funny anymore because I'm watching people being lied to about contact right now. Like Michael Kennedy, he is absolutely convinced that they're still here and they are not. But all you have to do is walk into a chapter of science and look at what the astronomers and astrophysicists are telling you, and our field lines are absolutely dangerous right now. And Lazar can back that up. He will tell you. He is a scientist.
Let me ask you, what do you think, Dolly? What do you think about, because this is a case that I've looked into for a while, and if it's true, it would prove that there has been official contact. And that's the alleged landing that happened circa 1964 at Holloman Air Force Base in New Mexico. What have you heard about that case?
It is absolutely true. It happened.
Yeah.
There was contact. They were contacting world leaders back in the 60s because they were trying to convince them that they needed to stop playing with nuclear stuff. Okay.
Yeah.
But we were going to kill each other with it. And they were worried about it. They're not here to hurt us. They're here to protect us from ourselves. Evolution. Okay. Yeah. And they got a resounding, you can't mess with what we're doing. We have the right, because
that's
we're all
really interesting, because this is crazy. Let me just, this is relevant to what you just said. I was doing the phenomenon, right? Making the phenomenon. And I just worked with this guy, Randall Nickerson, and we were organizing, bringing the witnesses that were children at the time, that were now adults, from all different corners of the world into Los Angeles, and we were interviewing them. And it was a big ordeal. My gosh, it was huge. And during that time, Roger Lear was desperately trying to reach me. And he's like, I've heard you're doing something on the Virginia alleged UFO crash and the live beings and yada, yada, yada. And I said, yes, I am. But right now my focus is on Rua. He goes, you have to interview me. And I said, hey, I want to interview you, but I'm so busy. I'd lost my voice. I was working 17-hour days. And he got really frustrated. I think it went on back and forth for like a week. And it wasn't like I didn't want to interview him. I wanted to interview him. What he didn't tell me was that he had cancer and he was dying. So he said, well, if you're not, he was all frustrated and probably pissed off with me. He goes, well, if you're not going to interview me, at least let me give you the tapes that I shot 20 years ago in Brazil. So he gave me these tapes, and then I made copies, digitized them. I sent them back to him. And then when I was doing Moment of Contact, I was like, oh my gosh, the tapes from Roger Lear. And so I got the tapes and I was like, wow, there's some gems in here. And then I thought, wait a minute, he wrote a book too. So I bought his book, and the tapes were generally a transcript from the book. But there was one scene that was with a couple of doctors that they described had one of these live entities, beings, aliens, whatever you want to call it, in the hospital. I think it was Humanitas. And they said they were performing some sort of procedure, and then all of a sudden things went sideways, and the entity communicated telepathically with the doctors. This is in his book, and he talked about this. And he said that the doctors said that the message they got was, we feel sorry for you humans. Like, what? Like, you don't know who you really are.
Right, exactly.
You don't have you have abilities that you haven't discovered yet.
Thank you. My words exactly. Same thing, same message.
Myself, and I kicked myself. It's like I contacted
one of
the guys that I contacted, Uberajana Rodriguez, who was apparently in the room. He wouldn't meet with me. Roger Lear had died. The gentleman that was with Roger Lear had just died. I couldn't reach him. So I was like, I want to report on this so bad, but I don't have one person who was in the room to testify. And I opted not to. And it was devastating. And to this day, I look back and I think, God, I wish I would have interviewed Roger Lear on that one, because that's so significant.
Yes.
You know, that was a direct, according to the doctors, a direct telepathic message from ET.
Right. And they do that. I am in communication with them. I do directly get contacted on a daily basis because I'm here and they're there now. And they can send messages to me clean across the universe practically. It is sad to me. And this is true. I do say this. We are all innately gifted with the abilities that they have, but they have been pushed out of us. They've been slammed down on. We've been toxified to the point that we can't use our equipment properly. And it's sad. We've been dummied down. We've been tortured, fear-based, horrified. Yeah. It's not good. And
I've had glimpses of it. I've had glimpses of telepathy, and I can prove it.
Yep. Everybody's telepathic. You have the ability, even now.
We all do.
It's not wide open.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like we all do.
Right. Everybody has the ability. And if you can detoxify your body and get rid of the calcification of your pineal gland, you will wake up. That's what they want. That's their number one message. Wake up. Because we will not be treated properly.
A couple of times in my life. One, they were in traumatic moments, extreme trauma, extreme stress and trauma. One was being mugged. Two was an abusive thing that happened with my father, my stepdad, and my mother. Telepathic, man. It was just, there's no question about it. I had telepathic communication. And another time was, I guess they call it remote viewing, is when I saw something that was taking place in a remote spot that I wasn't present. And I saw it like a film strip in my mind. It was unbelievable. And how do you explain that stuff? Like, how do you explain that?
Everybody has that ability. You're psychic.
Everybody has that ability. Yeah, exactly.
Oh, by the way, the government does admit to remote viewing. They've had
they did the CIA back in the 70s. Exactly.
Yeah. You know, how can they admit that we're psychic, but they won't talk about it? Okay. Yeah. How can they admit that this and this and this is going on, but they won't talk?
They wanted to use it. They wanted to use it to spy on their enemies.
Exactly.
You're not going to admit it's real. Well, we want to know what the Russians have.
Plausible deniability. Also, weaponization of everything. That's what they do. You know.
Yeah. All right. I'm going to pop up another question.
Yes. I've got about 5 more minutes, and I got to tuck my son into bed.
Okay. All right. This is from Alex. I skipped forward because he's like, ask my question. What do you believe is the single most compelling piece of evidence that suggests extraterrestrial life has interacted with Earth? And how do you address skeptics who dismiss it?
That's a great question. And I don't think there's any one particular case that we could hang our hat on. Yeah. I think it's a totality. It's a preponderance of eyewitness testimony, radar data, sensory data from primarily the military, photographic evidence from around the world to support to as an indication that the phenomenon is real and it's global.
Correct.
But if I had to give one case that obviously Roswell is a great case, but if I had to give one case in terms of like Close Encounters of the Third Kind, I think the most well-documented case in U.S. history would be Socorro, 1964, April 24th, with Officer Lonnie Zamora. I think that's one of the most well-documented, certainly in the United States, Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
That's awesome.
All right. Maybe one more question. Bambi Dudley. Hello, James. Please tell the Steven Spielberg story. You asked about him to screen your film and what he said.
Yes. Well, so I had tried to get to Steven Spielberg for so long. In fact, I'm probably still trying to get to him. I know. And I remember when I was in my 20s, I was doing my first UFO documentary. There was a woman named Janet. I'll leave her last name out of it, but she worked for Spielberg or like was friends with him. And I was doing a UFO documentary and I was naive. I was like, well, clearly I'm doing a UFO documentary and Steven Spielberg is going to grant me an interview and I'll get an interview with Steven Spielberg and it's going to be great. And it was probably like 1996 or 7. And I got a message back from Spielberg through Janet. And she goes, Spielberg is not going to meet with you. However, he said that since you're making a documentary on UFOs, you should consider going to Africa and covering this landing case that occurred just recently in Africa at a school. And I was thinking to myself, oh boy, yeah, please. I'm not,
Oh no.
Yeah, I know, right? I could have got in on that one early. John Mack was already there. But so fast forward, it was that was 97. So in 2007, 2008 would have been 2009. My guess is 2009. I have a lot of appearances with Larry King. I'm trying to use his platform to get the information out to a much broader, more, mainstream audience. And I got a rough cut done. I know what I saw. I was rather proud of it. It was pretty damn good. And at the time, people were going, how are you going to make a movie out of a press conference with a bunch of old retired men standing at the podium talking about UFO encounters? I was like, if Vice President Al Gore can make a documentary from a PowerPoint presentation, then doggone it, I can do, So anyway, so I was kind of proud. I was like, it's a 2 hour, it's pretty good. So I asked Larry King, I was like, would you mind sending this to Steven Spielberg? He goes, well, I said, well, he's really into this. Hey, this is the real life Close Encounters. And Larry's like, you know what? Yeah, let's do it. Send it off to him. I don't know, maybe 5 days later, I get a call from, I actually get a call from the agency of Steven Spielberg. Jocelyn Cesario called me. She said, hey, Mr. Fox, I just want you to know, and it was like 10 o'clock in the morning. I want you to know that Steven Spielberg is about to watch your movie.
That's interesting. About to watch it? Wow.
You mean like right now? She goes, yeah, he's going to watch it right now. By himself. She goes, yeah. So I called my dad and I was like, Dad, you're not going to believe this. Steven Spielberg's watching my movie right now. My dad's like, oh my gosh, let's have tea together. My dad's British. It's like, came down to my dad's house. We had some tea. We're like, oh, I can't believe right now Steven Spielberg's watching your movie, And about 2 hours go by and I get a phone call and it's the woman again at the agency. And she says, hey, I just want you to know he watched it.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
she goes, well, he wrote a letter to Larry King. What did the letter say? I don't know. He put it in an envelope and he sent it to Larry King. So I was like,
holy cow.
So 5 days goes by. I get a call from Abrielle Gallagher, one of the producers at Larry King Live. And she goes, James, you're not going to believe this. I was like, not going to believe what? Steven Spielberg sent a letter to Larry King about your movie. Oh, really? What did it say? She goes, sit tight. What's your address?
Ew.
I was like, really? Sends me the original, not a photocopy. So a couple days later, maybe it might have been the next day, but they overnighted it or whatever, FedEx driver, and I lived in a really rural small town. The FedEx driver rolls up to my house and he's just like, whistling Dixie and skipping to my house. And he goes, James, I know the guy because, he delivers. He goes, James, you're not going to believe. Oh, my God, I got this package. It's from Larry King's office. It says CNN, Larry King Live. I said, and it gets better. Guess who the letter's from? And he goes,
I knew.
Steven Spielberg. He goes, can I stick around while you open it? I said, yeah, sure. So I opened the thing up, and there is this letter from Steven Spielberg about my movie to Larry King Live, And sorry?
It needs to be in a frame, right?
I know. Let's see. I think I have it over there. You want me to grab it?
Yes.
All right, hold on.
Are you kidding? Are you kidding me?
Well, we're getting a scoop here, huh?
Drop that sucker. Let him get that thing on the screen.
Yeah, I will.
Okay.
We're already keeping him overtime a little bit.
There it is.
It is.
Perfect.
How cool is that?
See, I knew you had it in a
Wow.
frame, James. That's awesome.
Congratulations. That's amazing.
Isn't that cool?
Yes, it is
Can
totally
you
cool.
see it at all, or no?
Yes, we see it. We see it.
We can't quite read it, but
Yeah.
No, I'm going to hold it a little closer. Just
Beautiful.
the
Absolutely.
audience can make a freeze frame.
Yeah.
Anyway, isn't that cool?
Yes.
So, hey, let me read it. Let me read
Okay.
it, and then I'm going to go put my son to bed.
Okay.
all right.
Okay, you guys ready?
Yes.
This is cool. Let me put my old man glasses on here. All right, here we go. July 6, 2009. Dear Larry, with great curiosity, I watched the documentary you sent over and found it compelling. Personally, I would like to think that we are not alone, and even though I've devoted a generous percentage of my movies to extraterrestrial themes, I, for one, have never seen a UFO that's so unfair. I hope you will continue to pursue this topic on your programs and that someday our government will offer a total disclosure about what they know about unidentified flying objects and their true and natural origins. I continue to enjoy watching you and all your guests. All my best, Stephen.
That's beautiful.
Isn't that cool?
Beautiful, yeah. That's absolutely
Very
cool.
nice.
I don't think that I've ever read that on a podcast ever.
Very
Well,
much.
we're honored.
Listen, you're going to come back on our show. Say yes, please.
I will. Yes, I will.
Okay, when you come back from Brazil, let us know you're in town and we'll work out dates. How's that?
Just ping me, email me. Michael knows how to get in touch with me.
Okay. That would be
Thank you guys so much for having me on. I really appreciate it. And thanks for your understanding, knowing that I got to go put my son to bed.
No worries.
He's got a tutor really early in the morning.
We appreciate you coming on to our show. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Bye, guys.
Bye. All right, guys. How about that? Check out his movies. Out of the Blue. Really good. I think that one covers largely the Phoenix Lights, but several other incidents. I Know What I Saw. Also, I think that was actually about the Phoenix Lights.
Yes, it looks like it.
Mostly. The Phenomenon, which is my favorite.
Me too.
Because that covered Westall, that covered the Lonnie Zamora case, that covered Father Gill case in New Guinea.
Right.
I think also the Rua Zimbabwe case. Moment of Contact was very interesting. You'll learn a lot about the case in Brazil, Varginha. First-hand witnesses. It's much more complicated than I think a lot of people know about.
Right.
And of course, the program, which is all about disclosure and what's happening today in Congress.
Correct.
So, yeah. How fun was that, Dolly? Amazing.
I know. I'm like aghast. You know, it's like, oh my heaven, this is totally cool. This is one of our best guests. Just so you know, this is fantastic. There's a lot for him to say, and his journey is incredible. I mean, for somebody who's had no clue and then walked into it, you two have a lot in common there. You know, it's like a shockwave, waking up to it. You know,
his UFO sighting is so much more than a coincidence.
Yeah. Yes, it
when
is.
they're that close, I mean, come on. when you know they're watching you and you're watching them.
Exactly.
There's communication there. I want to talk to him more about that. Yeah, he was awesome. What a delightful guy.
Definitely.
Okay.
Well, this is going to turn into a Q&A, don't you think?
Yeah, we have 20 minutes left, so we may as well go through some of these questions, which we can answer, guys. Mr. Fox, could you please tell us the number one experience or the most insightful conversation? I think he said it was Hal Puthoff and probably Gordon Cooper.
Bigelow. Yeah, Cooper, yeah.
It's interesting he talked about that one witness, Jason Sands, because there's a lot of pushback on him. And I thought he handled that real well. I was like, hey, you talk to him. You do your research. Don't believe me.
Right, exactly. I did mine, you do yours. That's right.
All right. Maybe you can answer this one since James isn't here. What is the purpose of the interactions between the phenomena and humans?
The purpose is basically, and he said it in so many words, it's to inform us that they exist and that we are somehow connected to them. That's what he was alluding to. And it goes deeper than anybody knows. And he's absolutely correct. So, yeah, I think that's what he was saying. Gregor
saying, is this live? Yes, we're live right now.
We're very live, yeah.
We are going to go through any questions, and most of them are for James. I know we tried to get through as many as we could, but we will, if you have ones right now for us, we will do what we can. So I cannot speak for him. Upcoming event before 2027, alluded to by Lou Elizondo and other whistleblowers. I don't know. It's rolling out. This is all very carefully orchestrated disclosure, I think. But I think events are absolutely planned by secret government folks. So I don't know.
Maybe we'll do a show on that, and I will give you what my estimation of what's coming at us with the pertaining to our government and the world events and things like that. I can talk about that. So let's do a show about it.
All right. What is I know of your opinion of Charles Hall and his time as a weatherman for Area 51. It's another great question, Michael. I'm so sorry. We're going to have him back. I'm so glad he agreed. I know about Charles Hall. I think he wrote the Millennial Hospitality books, which he labeled as fiction, I think because to protect him from any NDAs he was under. I find it really compelling. I've got his books right there behind me. I'll have to fill you in on him. I don't know that I've told you his full story, but he allegedly met with tall whites, and he describes them very much like you do. And part of his book is all devoted to mathematics and some advances he'd made in understanding mathematics.
I find that very interesting, by the way, and I do believe his story because the tall whites are extremely scientific beings, and they handle a lot of data that's their forte, and they would act that way. They would have that going on. So yeah, I believe him.
I'm so sorry, guys. I wish we could have asked James all these questions, but he has a 10-year-old kid. The kids come first. What is his opinion on why Congress let me see. Does he have an opinion on why Congress or none of the whistleblowers brought up Bob Lazar's statements? Yeah, that is a good question.
Yeah, we might be able to answer that one for you on one of our upcoming shows, because in February we're going to have James Goodall and Michael Schratt on, and it's a sort of a lead up to the Congressional next thing coming out. Or no, not that one. Lazar's going to be doing something right about that time, and they thought it was fortuitous that we picked the dates that we did. So that's going to be an interesting show. So it'll get maybe answered then. Okay.
Yeah. Let me see if we have any questions now that are more aimed towards us. Otherwise, here's one from Alex. Question for Dahlia: how can we make contact to ETs?
You can do it psychically. You need to work on your abilities to do that. And basically what I'm going to tell you is that you need to learn to push all thoughts out of your mind. You need to really focus on what you're thinking. And you have to ask one question at a time, and then you have to give them time to answer you. And that means that you need to be in the practice of being psychic. In other words, you ride a bike around, you learn how to do that. Psychic ability has to be empowered 24 hours a day until it becomes second nature to you, because you're not used to using it like that. And it will come. I mean, they will contact you psychically. They can do that. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, and please do me a favor. Don't psychically ask a question to any specific entity. Just put the question out there. The right one will answer you. Okay. Do that. All right.
Yeah. I would underline that. I think meditation is really key to helping to develop your psychic abilities. A lot of literature on how to do that. Astral projection is a really good method. But I remember just being dead set on wanting to know who the Greys were and asking that question over and over and over. I was lying in bed one day and I was not asleep. I was just lying there, and I can only describe it as a download. I've heard people describe this sort of thing. And I've talked about this before on this show, I think. But all these images came flooding through my head, along with the sort of, I don't know
message.
How I put it.
Right.
Message, yeah.
It's not your thoughts coming in. Yeah.
They're essentially human. They showed a picture of a human, and it just went down this sort of flipping cards.
Right thing, yeah.
Sung the same basically
related.
Same species.
Yeah, we're related. Yeah.
Okay, let me go back to. Sorry, guys. Wish we could have had him for the whole darn show. And a little bit behind on all these comments, so it's hard for me to catch up here. But I'm going to do my best. Let me just go back to the ones I starred. Okay. We did that one. Additional information about Virginia case. Well, he probably does have some. Here's a good one. What do you think of the assertion that a lot of UFOs seen are now advanced human-made craft? I'd be very interested to hear what he has to say of that, because I know Dolly's going to say they're all basically.
They are. ETs are not here right now. They are absolutely not here. Yeah.
Okay. Clifford Stone. Oh, it's too bad we don't have him here. You guys, if you want to start asking some questions from us directly.
Well, if James goes back and looks at the video, he sees the questions up. Maybe he'll answer them in the comments. So,
do you believe Stephen Greer's recent claims? He makes a lot of claims, so it's hard to say which one you're talking about. Let me go back to the more recent questions. Here's one from Sonny Burnett. Thank you, Sonny. Dolly, do any ETs speak audibly?
Yes, absolutely. It's hard to understand the grays, especially the tall grays, because their mouth, they won't open their mouth and talk to you directly because they don't want you to see the chompers that they got. They have very sharp, spiky teeth, and it puts us off. Trust me. First time I saw it, I was like, look at that. You have a lot of teeth. So they don't speak audibly to people. But since I got to know them and I was around them a lot, yeah, they speak audibly. Mama speaks audibly to me sometimes.
Yeah.
So
and there are cases of it, certainly. I've heard
they can
several.
sing it crazy. Yeah.
In a very high squeaky, wee, 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 is how one lady described it. Lots of clicks and consonants with the praying mantis type beings. And certainly the human type ETs do speak audibly in several cases.
The Anunnaki speak audibly. I mean, there's a lot of them. Most of them can speak audibly. Yeah.
All right. Here's a question from George McDuncan. Can you tell me what's the first step to do to start cleaning my pineal gland?
Stop using fluoride. Stop bathing in fluoridated water. Put a filter on your house. You read every label because they put fluoride in all kinds of things that you don't even realize they've done it. So you have to become very, very aware of what fluoride's entering into your even salves and unguents and things like that. You got to be careful. Fluoride is an all-purpose thing. So be careful. Even some waters, bottled waters, if it's recycled bottled water, I wouldn't drink it because there's fluoride in it, absolutely fluoride in it. Spring water is your probably best bet to get, or put a heavy duty filter on your house, unless you have a well, and then you're good. It's a complicated thing.
Eat organic foods,
right?
Exercise,
right?
Do deep breathing, do what you would naturally do to clean your body.
Right. You can also eat the diet that somebody with kidney stones would eat, because you want to eat acidic things, like vinegars and pickled vegetables and stuff like that, because that breaks up calcium in your pineal gland. Important.
Yeah. And even most importantly, I would say, would do psychic exercises and exercise the pineal gland, because that itself will help, get it moving.
Right.
Okay. I'm doing my best here, guys. So let me see here. I saw one. The grays have teeth? Yes.
Yeah. They have very sharp teeth. They're meat eaters mostly. They mostly eat fish. They eat some birds, but mostly fish, and different kinds of fish. And it's amazing.
I've had quite a few, well, at least 3 or 4 contactees tell me they have really sharp teeth. So when I asked Dolly about that, I was very interested to hear what she had to say. And she's like, oh, yeah. Okay, Dolly, why do you think the ETs are not here now?
They are not here because they physically cannot fly in our atmosphere in our solar system. Our sun is affecting the pole shift. We hit an electromagnetic current sheet that popped our sun off to change its pulse. And when the sun does that, every other planet in our solar system does the same thing. Now our magnetosphere is very weak. It's 40% down. It's letting in all kinds of radiation, but the magnetic field lines that are our poles keep coherent for us are all over the place. There's a huge anomaly in the Atlantic, between South America and Africa right now. Nobody wants to fly through that. Our sun is letting more CMEs in and all kinds of things. It is just not safe. They started crashing in the 50s and 60s. It got worse in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. And by the 2000s and the 2010s, they went, we really need to get out of here. And by 2022, they were gone. They left. So no, they are not here. Until our poles go back the way they should, well, not the way they're going to be. They are changing. We are going to have a huge pole shift there. But once that settles down, and everything calms down from that, and our magnetic field lines reach cohesion again, and the magnetosphere tightens up, they can come back then, but not until.
It's interesting because in our show with Cheryl Costa, that question came up, and she's in contact with the Tibetan monks, I think it is.
Yes.
And they're like, no, they're not here. So
no, they're not.
Interesting verification from another source.
Arrow, all those guys, MUFON, they've all noticed that ETs are not really coming down, that the only reports they're getting are old reports. There are no new reports of ET, or if they are, it's people who are seeing what's going on here, not from them. And there's a lot of confusion.
Sandra is saying, well, some people are having experiences now. Is this interdimensional beings? I mean, can you meet them astrally, psychically?
Okay, this is complicated. If you can OBE, you can meet any ET OBE. There are interdimensional beings in the same space with us, and it would have to be a being in the same space with you. You might be meeting fourth dimensional beings, or almost fifth dimensional. Excuse me, I'm going to croak. And you might be meeting them, but you are not meeting third dimensional ETs who come here astrally or interdimensionally at all. They are home right now, or off doing other things in other places that they can fly at.
But they can also appear as, quote, an apparition or a vision, right?
If you're psychic, and you can they can remote view you in seconds. So you might be if you can remote view back with them, you can see them and hear them, but they're not physically with you at all. Okay.
All right. CT Gadar guy. Dolly, what is the first type of psychic ability you suggest trying to get a grip on? Like remote viewing or OBEs or anything else?
Remote viewing is probably the first best attack because it teaches you to focus. It teaches you to blot everything else out and see a specific target. You need confirmation, though. You can't remote view by yourself. There has to be somebody on the other side letting you know that you hit that target and you actually saw what it is. And then you have to confirm that you saw it by going there. So don't remote view Italy. Don't remote view Washington, D.C. if you're out west. Remote something that's in your area that you can drive to or walk to verify what it is you saw. Okay? That's what you do. That's the first thing. But meditation every single day. Learn to focus, learn to relax, learn to empty your mind of all the thoughts that you have all the time, because psychic ability hears. It does not talk. You can't overtalk your ability. You have to be quiet in your mind to get what you're getting, period. So tell your brain to shut up. Okay.
Yeah. I would suggest trying different kinds because you might have a natural proclivity for astral projection. You might have a natural proclivity for psychometry, holding an object, or clairvoyance, or telepathy.
Yeah.
Follow your excitement. Try them all because all of them kind of work in concert to each other. Do visualization exercises.
Yeah.
Your ability to
play
visualize.
with cards. Get your kids together, your family together, and get the cards, and play with each other. Play, do you know what this is? And keep notes on how well y'all are doing. You should be doing it all the time,
What do grays eat? Do they eat fish?
Yes, they eat fish. They eat meat. They don't particularly eat meat from here. They won't. It's tainted and toxic. They won't touch it. A lot of people seem to think that they're doing mutilations, and no, they are not. They don't want our meat. They don't even eat our fish. They don't eat our birds, nothing. They bring their own food with them. But yeah, they eat chicken, a type of chicken. They eat meat, but they mostly eat fish. It's brain food, no kidding. And their fish is not toxified, so they eat a lot of it, a lot. And they love sushi. Oh my God, they eat raw fish.
Are we going to become extinct? No. ETs have been collecting our genetic material for eons, and humanity exists beyond this planet.
Everywhere in the universe, yeah.
So
Right.
we're working very hard. In fact, all the species on this planet have been collected. We wrote about this in Symmetry. That was a part of a project that they're very much involved in.
Correct.
Okay. Let me see. I saw a question here about ETs and the inner Earth. And now I can't find. Oh, here it is. Okay. How about inner Earth? They are here, right? I think the reptilians are probably living on this planet.
Yeah, but in caves and stuff like that, or marshes or areas where you won't find them. There is no inner Earth. It does not exist. And I'll give you an example of why. This is all science.
Yeah,
I'm throwing
in terms of a hollow Earth. There is no
hollow Earth. Not at all.
It's not going to happen.
If you go into a cave and it's very deep, you'll feel the pressure on your ears the lower you go. This is less than a mile down and you're already feeling crushed. You can't go more than 3 or 4 miles down before dropping dead. It is impossible. You cannot do that. And nobody's living 4 or 5 miles down. That is not inner Earth. It's in the crust, period. You can't go 10 miles down in the ocean and not feel the pressure from that and explode yourself. So no, there's no inner Earth. Does not exist. Okay.
The dog is going crazy.
I know.
Okay. Are the meats that graze on the ship created by the condensing of energy via machine? Do they grow their meat, or is it natural?
It's natural, and they bring it with them. Most of the trips that they make in their craft are very fast. They can move at incredible speeds. They light gate to wherever they're going to. So nobody is really on craft for a whole lot of time without getting back into a natural environment. It's very rapid. So they only bring snacks and stuff like that. The bigger ships or mother craft do bring food with them, and you can eat on those craft. But even, you're just not going to stay in space. It's not safe. Gamma radiation is everywhere in space, and they really don't like it. They want to go home. Okay.
The dog's name is Duchess.
Right.
She's a sweetie.
Yes. She's a Great Dane, and she's 145 pounds above my heaven. Yeah. Okay.
She wants out. We still got 5 minutes, so we're going to wrap this up pretty quick here. Was fluoride added to water to suppress the pineal gland and block communication? Oh gosh, if they did that specifically to block communication.
They did. They absolutely did. It's not a lot of fluoride in Europe at all. It's actually banned. Ask yourself why. Okay. It was deliberately done to us. And they say, oh, well, we need good teeth. There are other ways to get good teeth. You don't need fluoride.
Okay. Let me see here. Leah, will Dolly tell us why the avian races are not spoken about as much?
Oh, that's a loaded question. Avian. The bird-like people, Ra was avian. They exist. They don't have a lot to do with us now. They did a couple iterations ago. The Egyptians saw them. It's just a little bit too much for this particular iteration to handle or deal with. That's why. Okay.
All right. Well, I believe we have time for one more. Here's one from Michael Kennedy. Can you comment on the applications of religion and the oligarchs' control of the knowledge they have held? Oh, yeah, religion, I think, has been used as a tool, unfortunately.
Yeah. Religion was contrived. And
initially, it works for some people to reach enlightenment. If you look at the Butler's Lives of the Saints, people have absolutely spiritually evolved using.
Yeah, but if you talk to those saints, they would tell you that the religion that got them there is not exactly okay. And that's serious stuff, okay? We have religion on this planet now that is doing all kinds of crazy stuff, and ask yourself why. If you're controlled by religion, you're not being allowed to flourish and evolve. And you can't be a slave to anything or anybody or anyone. You're here to learn. You're here to evolve. She agrees.
Yeah. The dog just totally wants out. So we're going to wrap it up, guys. We've got 3 minutes. So I just want to say thank you all to joining us.
Thank you. Namaste.
Yeah. Thank you very much sorry we couldn't have James the whole hour.
Right.
You guys are great. I'm sorry I had to kick a couple of you guys out in chat. You know, this is our show. If you want to join, please be respectful. We love having you all here, and we want to ask any question. It's, you know,
not off limits,
game, but you have to be respectful.
Correct.
So thank you. Namaste. We love you, the Owl Man. Sorry I couldn't say hi to all you folks. So we're going to say hello now.
We're glad everybody came. Yeah.
We love you very much. Hi, Susan. So happy to see all the progress you've made with your case, and it's still going strong. There's a fantastic documentary done by, oh gosh, Susan, it's the guy we had on the show, Earl.
Yeah.
Gosh, his name is now escaping me. Something Earl. I'm
not good with names, y'all. I can remember numbers all day long. Any sequence of them, I can memorize phone books. But your name, Earl Grey. That's him. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you, Jero. Thank you so much, Mountain Adventures.
Yeah.
Thank you guys for joining us. Yahira Medium, the Hanged Men. It seems UFOs have gotten bold lately. Why not? Well, I think that's our government doing a publicity campaign, honestly. If you're talking about the drone.
No good. Period. The end. Okay.
Thank you, Sunny Burnett.
Thank you,
Townie. Thank you, George. You guys are amazing. We truly appreciate you guys joining us for tonight. We're going to have James back on. What a delightful guy. Maybe
absolutely.
Next time he can join us for the whole show. He was actually just going to go for an hour, so he gave us another half hour.
Yes, he did.
That was very sweet of him.
Yeah.
So yeah, Dolly, I guess it's time to end the show. I hate to do it. I love you all so much.
We love you all.
We're here forever.
Yeah. Thank you all so much for coming here tonight and listening to The Light Gate. We're coming to you live from the beautiful city of New Orleans in Louisiana at the United Public Radio Network at 107.7 FM, and also on the UFO Paranormal Radio Network at 105.3 FM. We are on Facebook, we are on Roku, we are on Rumble, and we are on YouTube. Our 2 radio stations reach around the world, and you are all in good company because everybody around the world that can pick this station up can hear us as well as you. We love you very much. Yes. I want y'all to have a wonderful week. I want everybody in California to know that we are all praying for you. Absolutely. And are hoping for the best results in every situation. And I know there's devastation, and it breaks my absolute heart to know that you guys are in this situation. And we will do whatever we can. Good night, everyone. See you till next Monday. Namaste.